What's up, people? I'm Shaggy, the opinionated hippie, and today I got some Culture Club. Boy George, 80s pop, dance, new wave, synth band. Um, I'm doing this because my goal is to one day do every single artist that Frank Zappa references in one of his songs. And in the 84 version of Tinseltown Rebellion, we get a little bit of I'll tumble for ya, I'll tumble for ya, and then we get a big explosion as we move on to another 80s reference. Um, Always fascinated by how Frank came across this song. I'm assuming it was like an MTV thing, as there was a lot of MTV references in 84 being my video. So obviously he was watching that, interested in his thoughts on this song, why he chose to put this in there, though it works. Um, 6 albums. They sort of did 4 in the 80s, and they had to come back in like right before the millennium, right, like 99. And then they had another one about what, 5 or 6 years ago, 6 years ago. Um, I own one of these, got it as a Christmas present back in 83, still own it on vinyl. Um, that's the only thing I had heard of prior to this. I think my sister owned the first album. I owned the second one. So I was familiar with the first two, and I knew the hits or the singles after that. But yeah, uh, interesting little deep dive. So I'll put up the list when I'm done, from my least favorite to my favorite. And yeah, let's tackle some Boy George right here, courtesy of Frank putting it in Tinseltown Rebellion, the version you can hear on the best band. No, does humor belong in music? You can hear it in Does Humor Belong in Music? So yeah. Anyways, let's get on with. Oh, also, Claire Torrey appears on one of their albums. She did the Great Gig in the Sky on, right? Or was she Gimme Shelter? Was she both? And I think she was Great Gig in the Sky. So there's a Pink Floyd connection there. And yeah, that's it. There was another connection, I thought. Oh, they cover a Starman, David Bowie's Starman, and Adrian Belew of Zappa's band went and joined David Bowie. And why don't you go join whatever? All right, on to the albums. My number 6 is their fourth, From Luxury to Heartache. This was the last of their 80s albums before they took like a 13-year break. Pretty meh, kind of just bland 80s synthy pop, a lot of electronic drums, a lot of 80s production going on in there. Um, just a lot of songs that don't really do anything, no real good hooks. I don't think there's any real good hits on here. It's kind of a meh album. You can tell why they took a break after this. A couple good songs. The horribly named Gusto Blusto has some pretty good, like funky pop light type stuff. Um, Probably the highlight of the first half of the album, still just kind of an okay song, but stands out amidst, I don't know, like they're running out of ideas, it seems. Also, the song God Thank You Woman, nice funky vibe to that, kind of a good melody, maybe the strongest track on here. There's some gospel-y stuff. You get a lot of pseudo reggae, which just that UB40 type stuff, which just doesn't fly with me. Some Prince light, when they kind of get a little bit funky. It's almost like they're going Prince light for like a song called Sexuality. But yeah, otherwise it just kind of sounds datey. There's like a hype man that is on some of these songs. Like, I don't know what his deal is, or if he's a guest person that's coming in and just doing some like hyping up of the band and like a couple songs early on. But yeah, I don't know. Just kind of forgettable. Not much to this. My number 6, their fourth. From Luxury, which was their early days when they were huge stars, to Heartache when they decided to hang it up after this. So yeah, anyways, that's number 6. My number 5 is their number 3, Waking Up with the House on Fire. It does kind of seem like after their first 2 albums, or at least after their second one, they just kind of ran out of hooks. Um, just kind of a, I can't say this is a bad album necessarily. I think the sound, what is this, 84? It's not that bad for an 80s album. It's almost like they figured out what sounds work and what sounds don't. Not a bad album, but I don't know if it's that memorable. The first half of the album, I think, is much stronger than the second half of the album. The best song on here is called Unfortunate Thing. Nice horns, nice melody in the verse. But I think the title of this, Unfortunate Thing, in a way, kind of encapsulates everything that's wrong with Culture Club. Like, unfortunate thing. As a writer, you're told don't ever use the word thing. It's not specific. Use something more specific. And the fact that they've titled a song Unfortunate Thing, I think goes to their problem where they never, like, there's some UB40 vibes. There's some Spandau Ballet vibes. There's some late 70s kind of horny funk vibe, but they don't commit to any of it too hard. They don't really they just kind of ride the line between like, let's dabble in these things. And I think that lack of commitment and that lack of really having a solid identity, apart from just like an 80s synth pop band, is what hurts them. And even though Unfortunate Thing is the highlight of this album, I think the title kind of goes to what's wrong with them. Crime Time, first line is Death Cab for Cutie. I know they say they don't name their band after this, but we get a Death Cab for Cutie reference, pre-Death Cab for Cutie. Mistake Number 3 kind of sounds like a poor man's Spandau Ballet True. We get some bad 80s sounding type stuff. The metal song has that island vibe with almost like those fake steel drum sounds, which aren't good. Get some bad drum sounds in Hello Goodbye. The War song, I think, was a single, kind of got some radio play. The second half of it is good and kind of weird, but overall, I'm not sure the song works that well. I think it's better than their next album just because there's nothing horribly bad on here. There is some stuff that just doesn't age that well. But ultimately, it's kind of a forgettable 80s synthy pop new wave album. My number 5, their number 4, Waking Up with the House on Fire. It was their number 3, not their number 4, but my number 4 is their number 5. Don't Mind If I Do. This came out in 99. They took a 13-year break. They came back with a lot of material. I think the ultimate downfall of this album, it might jump to number 3 if it was shorter. It's like 70 minutes long. I don't think it's enough solid material to make it 70 minutes. I think one, if you cut all the sort of reggae light stuff and get rid of all the UB40 vibe that's on here, immediately, I'm going to say this jumps to the next spot. Maybe not. It's got a cover of Starman on here, which is pretty straightforward, but that is such a great song that they don't even ruin it. It's actually kind of good. A number of good songs. The second track, Cold Shoulder, has this really cool, like, low-key, mid-tempo vibe that wasn't something they were leaning into in the 80s. A lot of really cool synth sounds that date well, and a lot of cool just like 90s eyebrows, just like electronic sort of intrusions that just add a little flavor to the song. Song called Mirror, really good upbeat pop, catchy melody, great bass playing. On a lot of these songs, kind of the redeeming factor is the bass. Some good stuff. And then the last 3 songs are all really good. Kind of ends on a really solid note. Confidence Trick, kind of low-key ballad that slowly builds, has a nice groove to it. The cover of Starman, which works perfectly. And then a song called Less Than Perfect, which is this sort of atmospheric, slow building with really nice, kind of subtle, moody vibes, nice guitar, nice piano, just really good energy. For the most part, not bad. I think it's just, could be trimmed a little, could be edited a little. I think the second half is better than the first half. They're again dipping their toes in other people's genres. There's a song on the first half called Sign Language, which kind of sounds like a Sade light type vibe. The UB40 stuff doesn't work. Song called Black Comedy, which almost sounds like a Ricky Martin, like, hey, let's sound like Ricky Martin. I think Ricky Martin was 90s, right? So they're still kind of like stealing other people's vibes at times, but there's enough stuff on here where I think if you maybe cut it in half, like a 35-minute album, pretty solid listen. But a good comeback. George has lost some of the personality in his voice. He's got a little more, it's just gotten much lower, and it just feels like that character that he was, that sort of personality that shone through, is just missing a little. And at times you're just like, that doesn't even sound like him. Um, but the overall sound of the album is better than those last two 80s things, and there's some enjoyable moments on here, some enjoyable moments, just maybe a little bit editing to make it a more consistent album, not because my attention span got bored, but just because they're not that good of songs. So yeah, can maybe have like a 40-minute album, then a bunch of like, you know, bonus tracks on the CD, so you know this is how we define the album and this is stuff we chose not to put on it. It's a way to get around that. But yeah, that's my number 4. Their number 5, Don't Mind If I Do. My number 3 is their debut album, 1982's Kissing to Be Clever. The aforementioned I'll Tumble For Ya, really catchy pop is on here. Plus the absolute banger of a ballad, Do You Really Want to Hurt Me, is on here. That is a great song. I'm bowing down to that song. That's a good song. If you were alive in this time, you knew that the world went crazy over the fact that Boy George looked like a woman. It just puzzling how obsessed we were over that. I mean, I don't understand. But anyways, but there's also some other good stuff on here, especially on the second half of the album. Song called Boy, Boy, I'm the Boy. Really cool bass in here. Just kind of good synth pop. The chorus is kind of hooky, kind of low key, a little darker. And then the song White Boys Can't Control It, kind of nice dramatic intro into this cool eerie vibe that absolutely works. Second half of this album is pretty strong. And then Do You Really Want to Hurt Me closes the album on just a home run. We get a song called Love Twist, which features someone called Captain Crucial, who drops like this UB40 type eerie rap that doesn't really work, Irie rap that doesn't really work. We also get some horn sounds. I don't know if there's actually horns on here or synth horns. No, it's like synth horns. I guess we get a trumpet and a flute, but it also seems like we got some synth sounds going on in there, like for fake horns. Not bad, just 80s pop, a little bit dated in the sound. Couple really good songs, and I'll Tumble For Ya. The whole kind of side B is actually kind of pretty good. But yeah, even in like the early 80s sound with all the pop, I don't think this would make a top 10 of like early, as good as some of these songs are. I don't think it's a top 10 early 80s synth pop album. I'm not sure. It'd be interesting to see in some other timeline how they would have done had Boy George not been Boy George, but just some other random sort of Simon Le Bon white looking like blue-eyed soul singer. Yeah, who knows? Not a bad album. Has its pretty strong moments, but that would be my number 3, their debut, Kissing to Be Clever. My number 2 is their 2018 comeback album called, which was under the title Boy George and Culture Club, called Life. Really solid album. Kind of reminds me of what Steve Winwood was doing in the 80s with like Back in the High Life and that other one that came after Back in the High Life, where it was like kind of adult pop, right? Maybe a little bit of energy, but not too much energy. Maybe a little bit of rock, but not too much rock. A lot of sort of electronic instruments as your bass. And it reminds me of that. By far the best sounding of theirs. It doesn't sound 80s dated. There's no sort of also weird 90s stuff dating it. I think the best sounding album. And there's some pretty good songs on here. Also, his voice has gotten even sort of deeper and lost even more of that sort of character. And at times, I'm not even sure it sounds like him. But the songs are good. Opening God in Love, cool modern synth vibe, really great bass vibe, really great groove. Following Bad Blood, great bass-driven, tight pop song. Little doo-doo-doo disco action on the bass that's pretty nice. A song called Runaway Train, kind of upbeat, feel-good R&B vibe. Just a very good adult contemporary song that Steve Winwood could have dropped this in the 80s. I think it would have worked. Resting Bitch Face, great name. Funk, late 70s, funk light, R&B light, that kind of vibe with horns coming in and adding a burst of energy. Different Man, some more of these great horns coming in, that sort of late 70s kind of white boy funk type thing that was kind of popular. Oil and Water, kind of a piano ballad a la Elton John that slowly builds. More Than Silence, kind of a YouTube, Streets Have No Name, or Rattle and Hum era, Joshua Tree era, with just these like the bass kind of slowly driving, like a not necessarily a ballad, but not a rocker, one of those slowly building songs. Works really, really well. Closes out with a song called Life. Boys just front and center at the beginning singing, and instruments kind of slowly come in, slight gospel-y vibe. Yeah, really, really good album. Surprisingly strong for a 2018. Not really as like new wave dancey as their 80s stuff, but at the same time, we're still pop. Still got a little UB40 every once in a while, but we still kind of have that same energy, and Boy George is still kind of front and center. But yeah, really enjoyed this. This was a very, very pleasant surprise. But yeah, all right. But that's my number 2, their last one from 6 years ago, which means there's one more, the one I own, the one I've heard by far the most. And yeah, I still think it's the best. Let's get on to number 1. And my number 1 is their second, Color by Numbers, 1983. Got this for Christmas that year. I don't think it was my birthday because that's not till the summer. So I listened to this quite a bit. Had 1, 2, 3, 4 pretty big hits, at least MTV hits, at least got a lot of radio play. Karma Chameleon, just great 80s pop, nice harmonica action. It's a Miracle, just nice, awesome sing-along. Church of the Poison Mind, which just has that like Satisfaction type drum beat, some really good gospel-y action in there. In the Church of the Poison Mind. And then Miss Me Blind, nice catchy harmonies, just good pop song. Really great move from a production or capitalism promotion standpoint. The line Kissing to Be Clever is in Miss Me Blind, which is the title of their previous album. So I would imagine at least one person, probably more, like, oh, Miss Me Blind, Kissing to Be Clever. And they bought that album thinking it was on there. Maybe. I don't know. I like when bands reference the titles of other albums on either previous or post albums, conceptual continuity angle. Plus another couple good songs, Black Money, kind of a cool, slightly ballady, slow burning type song with some fantastic background vocals. It's a number of times where Boy George is more than happy to let the background vocalist come in and just lay waste, just do these awesome like gospel runs and bring the energy up. He lets that happen on Black Money really, really well, in a good way. And then a song called Storm Keeper towards the end of the album, which just has a great melodic hook in the chorus. Really, really good song. Great bass parts in that. But yeah, maybe because I've heard this by far more than I've heard the others, I like it the more, and all the melodies kind of work for me. But yeah, I really kind of like this album. Changing Every Day has one of those sort of Duran Duran, Spandau Ballet, slightly ballady, slow burning songs. I don't think it's as good as like something like a Save a Prayer or a Careless Whisper or any other sort of 80s kind of ballads, but it's in that ballpark, and it's a pretty good song. But yeah, out of all of these albums, I would say this one and the one I had at number 2 are the only ones that kind of really hold up over the years, apart from just being like, nostalgic. There's some 80s sound issues on this one, obviously, because it's from the 80s, 83, but I think for the most part, the hooks are there, the melodies are there. It's not that bad, and an annoying of a sound. But yeah, I would say easily they're number 1, and the hits and the singles kind of stand up to time in a 80s sort of way. But yeah, number 1, Color by Numbers. And that's what they look like in typewritten form. Yeah, I would say those, the 80s ones, number 6 and 5, just kind of forgettable. Some of the sound issues, the production issues, just still aren't able to, or pull down what is already a weak album. I think if the songs were much better, they'd maybe be able to overcome that, but they aren't. Don't Mind If I Do has its moments for a 99. And then the top 3, I think, are by far the most consistent, with number 1 and 2. Both number 1 and 2 kind of being up there. I think if 2 just had a couple more, obviously, sort of earworms, Life might be able to jump to number 1. But as it is, I think it's a surprisingly solid listen. But yeah, that's all I got for I'll Tumble For You, inspired by Frank Zappa's Tinseltown Rebellion, the 84 version. Thanks for watching. If you're a Culture Club fan, love to know your thoughts on this band, what I messed up on, what I'm wrong about, why I should like other albums more. You know how comments work. Subscribe, like, share, comment, do those things. And if you want some good 80s new wave pop with a lot of electronic instruments and that kind of synth vibe, yeah, check out Color by Numbers. And if you want a surprisingly adult contemporary pop album, check out Life. It might surprise you. Get to that second song. It's that second song when it really, really kicks in. You know, the first song I thought was really good too. Never mind. Just listen to it. That's all I got. Peace. Talk to you later.